You're listening to the Wealth and Wanderlust podcast, an international finance and personal development podcast for the modern day woman. I'm your host, Vanessa M.W., and I'm here to help you build a better life abroad or in America. You can find out more about my work in finance and travel on wanderonwards.co, or you can say hi on Instagram at wanderonwards. Not all classrooms have four walls, so open your mind to what's possible and let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Vanessa M.W. back for another episode of Wealth and Wanderlust. Today, we have a very special guest. She's into the family finance. She knows all about kids and like how to wrestle them. But more importantly, she's part of the Latina community that we have on Instagram, which I honestly couldn't have gotten through quarantine without you guys. I didn't know there were so many of us until I started reaching out. So let me allow her to introduce herself. Rita, who are you? Where can people find you? And what do you talk about?
Hi, my name is Rita-Soledad Fernandez Paulino. You can call me Soledad. But for some people, Soledad is even too much, so I go by Sol. I am a personal finance enthusiast. I am the chief financial officer of a small startup, aka my family of four, who we call ourselves the Puro Party Paulinos. I create personal finance content on Wealth para Todos because when I learn something, I want to share it with others. I feel like I was late to the game in terms of understanding personal finances. And as soon as I started to learn, I wanted to talk dinero with anybody who would want to talk dinero with me. And it just turned out that it was strangers online. So talk to me.
Yeah. I think anyone who comes from a Latino background, we are terrified of talking about money from a very young age. We know it's the chancla or nothing. And what started your personal finance journey? Like, why did you get into it?
In March of 2019, I got sick, and I used to be a math teacher. And I was so sick that I had inflammation throughout my body, including my lungs. And I couldn't walk because it was so hard for me to breathe. And I was on bed rest, and I couldn't pick up my children. I have a now 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, but back then they were younger. And they couldn't hug me because it hurt so much in my body. And I was on medical leave for 6 months and had to be put on disability. And during that time, literally, I would just lay in bed. And I had a cousin who introduced me to Dave Ramsey. He's a Republican. That's why, you know.
Yeah, I'm throwing shady eyes for anyone who can't see this.
That's why he knows about Dave Ramsey. So he had told me about Dave Ramsey. So that was one of the first books I read, Total Money Makeover. And growing up Mexican and Catholic, like I read that book, and all the shaming really motivated me to get out of debt. Like that shaming was something that really resonated with me. Unfortunately, my debt-free journey was one that I felt like, oh, I have to do this really quickly. And how did I get into this debt in the first place? And I was shaming myself so much. And then after a while, I started reading other personal finance books, and I read one by, I want to say her name's Ashley Feinstein. She wrote the book, The 30-Day Money Cleanse. And I thought, wait, your personal finance journey doesn't have to be full of shame. It could have cariño. And that started to shift my mindset. And I just started to think like, I want everyone to become debt free. And I want everyone to have an emergency fund. And I want everyone to start investing for their retirement. And I want it to be a process that they can enjoy. That it
Absolutely.
Can be something, like I said, full of cariño. And so that's how eventually I got into Wealth para Todos. But for myself, I was on bed rest. I was sick, and I needed to. I just got in my head, and I just started consuming all of this content, and I decided I wanted to become debt free before I turned 33.
Amazing. And you're like 21, right? I'm just like looking at your skin and how you present yourself.
I turned 34 in September. I'm really excited to be 35 next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so within like May 2019 is when I started reading the books, and then I started reading more, watching YouTube videos, and we paid off our debt by September 2019. And it was
Wow.
about $23,000.
Wow.
Mind you, I was on bed rest. I literally couldn't do anything. I couldn't leave my house. I wasn't being tempted to spend my money on anything besides medical bills that kept coming my way. And then once I started getting my health back and started to live again, I realized I didn't really learn the skills to make this sustainable. My debt-free journey felt like deprivation, and I thought, how am I going to build an emergency fund? Because this isn't sustainable. How, like,
No.
everything that I cut out in order to become debt free, I found myself then wanting to be like, okay, well, now we're debt free. Let's go on a vacation. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's go to the Maldives.
And it was hard because we still didn't have an emergency fund. And we have 2 kids, right? And so I started to think, okay, well, how am I going to make this sustainable? And for me, it meant that I was going to have to do it poco a poco, and todo con tiempo, like it was going to happen. And I needed to be a lot more patient, and I had to increase like the amount of money that we had in our budget for personal spending. Like when we were on our debt-free journey, we only gave, it was $200 a month, like my husband and I, to spend money on anything we wanted. And then for the kids, it was $50. So it was $500. So for some people, I think like $200 a month, it's like, oh, $50 a week. Oh, that's good, but I live in Los Angeles. Getting a manicure and a pedicure is like $50. So that's already like very limiting. And I don't know. I'd have to look through my budget to see. I just know that I struggled so much. I struggled so much in trying to live within that. And so then like I was like, we have to increase it. And yeah, so it made it more sustainable.
Yeah, I think people forget that your personal finance journey is a journey. There's going to be uphills, there's going to be downhills. But I think a piece of advice that I give to my clients is you need to work in sprints. So some months you're going hard, you're totally focused, you drive that $200 budget down to 50. And then other days you go to the Maldives and you enjoy the money you worked so hard to keep. Do you talk to your children about finance, or what's your approach with that?
Yes. So my kids know about our no spend days. They know about their budget. So like right now in what month are we in? November. In
Yes.
November, they know like they get $100 each, and if they go over that budget in a month, then they're over budget, right? Like, but if they go under, that money is pulled and we put it into a savings account for them. And so this month they actually went over, both of them. They got like these art classes and they got new clothes. And I covered it through like their personal savings from previous months where they didn't spend anything. And so the kids know like you've reached your budget. Next month, you could start thinking about the things that you want for next month and prioritize getting that in the beginning of the month. But that's it. Like, don't ask me. Like my friend was like, "Oh, can I get this app?" And I was like, "No, baby, you wanted to get those 3 pairs of pants."
Yep. And this is so important.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even think my parents spoke to me and my adult siblings about money like you do with your children. How do you get children interested in money? Because it's one thing to say you have a budget, this is how math works, but to get children excited about money, how does that work?
One of the first things I did with my now 3-year-old, but when he was 2 years old, I used to have him separate the coins, the change, and the house. And separating like the dimes and the pennies and the quarters and the 5 cents, and just separating categorizing that versus like colors or things that they like they tell people to like have kids categorize their socks and their clothes and their fruit. And I thought, no, let them categorize the money. And so my 2-year-old, that's how he started to learn about money. And even the 2-year-old knows, like, oh, it takes money to buy things. I'm going to save my money. My 2-year-old's a lot more into saving versus my 6-year-old, who's a natural spender. And as soon as they get money, they want to spend it. So yeah, that's how I started, just like, talking to them. And then in terms of budgeting, they hear us talk in our everyday lives, right? So one budget that's very common in our lives is our dining out budget. And us being like, okay, how much more money can we spend on eating out this month? And with that amount of money, is it going to be pollo loco? Is it going to be, tender greens?
This is such an LA conversation. I go to all of these places. I'm originally from Los Angeles, for anyone who didn't know. Carry on, sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, that's, it's just those conversations. And so that's my 6-year-old at this point will ask me, like, do we have money in the budget for this? Do we have money in the budget to, eat here? And, they ask about that because they hear my husband and I talking about it. And so we'll do like one monthly check-in about our budgets. And then when we want to spend money, we check in with our budget before we're going somewhere. Or even like on Sunday, we were going to my abuela's house and I said, let's get comida for everybody that's going to be there. Don't worry, everybody. We're still social distancing. It was only a total of like 6 of us and we were outside. But in the conversation, I was like, oh, should we eat lunch by ourselves first? Or do we have money to take it over to everybody else? And we didn't have money in our budget to take it from everyone else in terms of our dining out budget. So then we started to have the conversation of like, who will give money from their personal budget to add money to the dining out? And so that's something that my kids are also aware of too, that they know they have their personal budget. So like when Mulan came out, my 6-year-old was like, I'll pay for movie night, but I want to watch it the day it comes out. And then my 2-year-old was saying, I'll pay for popcorn. Yeah, it's cute, right?
Wow, that is so wonderful. I cannot think of any time I've ever seen children behave that way, myself included. Like, I didn't really learn about money until I was like 24. So I am going to put this into practice if I so choose to reproduce. And did you have to sell your husband on this, or was he like on team money bags from the get-go?
So my husband and I both grew up, well, my husband grew up in the projects in New York City. I grew up house poor. Like my mom worked really, really hard to keep her real estate. And as a result of that, there wasn't money for other things. And if it was purchased, it was usually on a credit card. So my husband and I both were raised by single mothers. So it was something that for us, it was just like, we grew up not necessarily wanting money to buy things, but more to have experiences that we didn't have. And husband has always been on board about budgeting. He was a little like weirded out when I started investing. He was nervous about that. Just because it wasn't something that we were familiar with. So I had to do a lot of like showing him like YouTube videos, telling him, look, I'm reading this, listen to this podcast. Like IRAs are a thing. It's a thing and they're not sketchy. Like, like this is legit. Let's do this. And it really helped that, we have Miss Be Helpful and Investing Latina, who are 2 Dominicans, and he's Dominican. And he was like, okay, well, if they're doing it, which is why I always feel like representation really matters, because you never know who's going to relate to you, to your story, and want to start like this personal finance journey as a result.
Absolutely. I don't think until I like started opening my mouth and saying, hey, I'm doing this, did I really meet other Mexicanas doing the same thing. And we got to like share experiences about how our parents taught us about money, which was not at all. And like, I am the granddaughter of a Mexican gardener. If I can learn about money, then anyone can learn about money, how to grow it, how to keep it, how to make more of it. What has been the biggest cultural challenge that you've faced while learning about money?
That people don't want to talk about it with
Mm,
my loved ones. So like when I became debt free, I posted it onto like my personal Instagram story. And I was like, we're debt free. I paid off all my student loans. Not one person sent me like a little heart emoji or like the clap the hands emoji or party, like nothing. No one responded to my,
damn.
yeah. And that, then I was like, oh shit, why? And I thought, is it because I'm already late? Is it because I paid off my student loans so late? Is it because I'm the only one who was in debt in the first place? Is it because I have two kids and people are like, wow, you have two kids and you had all this debt? Like, I didn't know why no one responded until months later when I learned that just it's because a lot of my loved ones were still in debt. A lot of my loved ones weren't investing in retirement. And it was just something that sometimes it's triggering. It's triggering for people. You know, a lot of times we see things that other people are doing and we want to do them too. But then it's also overwhelming because they're like, where do you start? Um, which is another reason why I really wanted to start Wealth para Todos, because I didn't have loved ones who would have conversations about dinero with me. And I just thought, like, I want to teach my loved ones, I want to teach people in my community most about this. But if they're not going to listen, then maybe I could help somebody else. And by the time I got like 1,000 followers on Instagram, then like my sister started following me. Yeah, and then like the more like, and in some ways that's the thing. It's like I feel like maybe the more followers I get on Instagram, then my actual loved ones, the people who I really want to talk dinero with, will actually start to follow me because it's still something that they're just like, I can't think about this right now. I can't think about this right now. I'll start budgeting when I have more money. I'll start saving for investing after I do, pay off more of my debt or pay off a credit card, And so I've had to learn to respect those boundaries as well because I was very like, no, you need to. And then like people weren't texting me and then avoiding me. So I just had to learn like, okay, let me respect those boundaries and let me have conversations with people who want to talk about, because I literally don't see any of the shame. I don't feel it. I don't like, I'm like I learned so much from other people who are transparent with their numbers. I hope that other people are also able to learn from me too, or just like to have the conversations. I've been able to learn a lot and apply a lot. We became debt free, so we paid off the $23,000. We saved up a $30,000 emergency fund. We maxed out 2 Roth IRAs. We maxed out husband's 401k, all in like a relatively short time. And it's because of the conversations I've had with other people on social media. You know that one of the big aha moments I had was when I saw you in Hey Verna's Hella Helpful series.
What?
That's how I found out about you, and that's when I started following you. And I was so excited to have another. I was like, she's Mexican. She's Mexican, because a lot of the Latinas that I was following were Dominicanas from New York City. And so when I had like a Mexican California girl and then I saw your blog, and I was like, oh my god, she's a content creator. Wait, what? Like this is a thing? Like I can do this? And so yeah, it's a lot of times like you don't know who you're going to influence.
It's like a domino effect. So my very best friend in all the world, she was my roommate in China, and her Chinese was so much better than mine. I was constantly poor. I couldn't even afford to feed myself at some of the points because I got salmonella and I couldn't go to work for 3 months. She took care of me in a way that I will forever be grateful for. She was like my maid of honor at my wedding. And then now I'm teaching her about money and she's investing. She's paying herself from her company that she started and went legit with. And it's so interesting how, as we're existing and just trying our best, we're impacting the people around us that respect us and love us in ways that we could have never imagined. And so just as she helped me with these things that I wasn't particularly familiar with or like frankly good at, my Chinese was terrible. Um, now it's my turn to kind of bring my friend up to the next level with something that I know and that I'm really comfortable with. And that has been so gratifying. And I see every single day on your profile the wonderful people that you're helping. And frankly, the people that are often overlooked, because the Dave Ramseys, he wants to help the like wealthy white women that got into debt in Dallas, Texas, who want to just like go to church and shame one another for things. I don't see the same sort of like Jennifer Lopez for us. Can you think of anyone?
I think I think each one of us is our own little personal finance person. I think of Janice. I think of you. I think of Delianne. I think of Miss Be Helpful. There are a lot of Latinas talking personal finance. Eva Macias is also here in California. There's a lot of us, it's like there's a lot of us, but there's not actually, because when I went to this thing called FinCon, I was like, oh, I'm the only Latina here. And when I show up to different spaces that, to want to learn more about personal finances, I'm like, oh, I'm the only Latina here. And and part of the reason why I want to like teach everyone about dinero is because when I show up to these places, I don't want to be the only Latina in the room. I don't. I want us all to be building wealth juntos. And and so yes, I could say like follow all of these accounts, but at the end of the day, it's still those are the only accounts.
Yeah, it's super lonely. And I get trolled all the time on TikTok for this, but it makes a difference when you see someone who comes from your background, who speaks a similar language, who understands your struggles, because then you don't have to justify your existence and your struggles and the things that are unique to you and your culture. What piece of advice would you have for a Mexicana from like Los Angeles or New York who is just starting her personal finance journey and has other people to consider? So, children, a loved one, a parent. What would your advice be to that person?
Quick commercial break. Want to manage your money better? Check out my beginner's budget dashboard. It's an easy to use digital tool that helped me economize my lifestyle easily so I could invest over $20,000 in 2020 alone. Check out the link in the description.
A key thing after you've done your zero-based budgeting, you've looked at your numbers, you understand how much money you have coming in, what's the difference between your expenses and your income. I would say a big thing that has helped us a lot is having a family loved one emergency fund. So separate from our own emergency fund, we put away money, $200 a month into a family emergency fund. Because when you are one of the few people in your family who maybe got a degree or who's making a more income or waited a little longer to have your children, so that also provides sometimes some more financial stability. When you're the first one to be learning about retirement and investing, you're going to be the one that people turn to ask for money when they may not have an emergency fund and their car breaks down and they need to pay to get their car fixed, or because they need new tires, or because we're in a fucking global pandemic that is really impacting our communities. And maybe they're not able to go to work and their income has been impacted. And having that family emergency fund has been really good for us because we're able to help our loved ones without sacrificing our own financial goals. And so it's been a way that's like, okay, we have this money. If somebody needs money for something, we are able to offer it to them too, which I think is also important because if people are not talking about dinero, then you don't necessarily know. And so something that I've been very explicit is telling like the loved ones who are our loved ones, like, hey, we have this family emergency fund. If you ever need something, aquí tenemos dinero. This is literally to support our loved ones. and we budget for this, and this is something that, it's available to you. And a lot of times what ends up happening when I have that conversation is they're like, wait, what, you budget? Tell me more about that. How do you put money away each month for this, And I think that's good, it's a good segue, because it's also hard for you to be building yourself up, building your own wealth, paying off your own debt, and feel like you can't be there for your loved ones. That can be challenging, and setting the boundaries around how you can help people, because you don't want to enable anybody either, so having that loved one emergency fund, knowing like under what conditions like you're gonna let someone borrow money, how much money, would it be a borrow versus just give, and also understanding like we have that money, and even for people who ask us to borrow, we just say, and mentally we prepare ourselves to only lend what we could absolutely give. Because
Absolutely.
you don't need to fight anybody over dinero either, and you don't want to have like resentment over that. So just understanding that, because I do think like a lot of times when you're first gen, second gen, you're responsible for helping other people in your family.
And I think it gets particularly complicated with Latino families because there's just so many of us, and we've all had such different starting positions in the grand race of life. So when you have a college degree, when you're doing well, you almost feel a sense of shame for your success because you haven't brought enough people with you. You're not supporting people enough. You're not generous enough with your time, money, and attention. How do you cope with these feelings?
Part of it is just understanding that for me to always just speak my truth, right? So like my best friends, they didn't go to college when I went to college. One of them is a cosmetologist. Another one had her 2 kids like before she was 23, so a lot younger. And those friends, I was able to tell them like, hey, I'm in college and I feel like I don't belong. I feel lonely. I feel like I don't fit in here. I don't know what I'm doing. And the times when I dropped out of college and went back to school, like I was always able to tell them my truth, and they were able to tell me their truth. And I was just so lucky to have those 2 friends who were able to like support me no matter where I was, despite our life experiences being so different. And I think it set a tone or an expectation in my own life that anyone who comes my way, like if you don't have my back like they do, like our energy is not right. We're not going to be in each other's lives. So that's been like a privilege that I've had, that unconditional love from these girls since I was 10. So for more than 24 years, I think that's the longest relationship I've ever been in, those friendships. And then also I had my abuelas. I think my abuelas who always reminded me like, we made sacrifices for you to have a better life. So don't feel guilty about your better life. Like this is what we worked for. This is why, we came here in the first place. This is why there was 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment. This is, why your grandfather worked late and we didn't have things so that you could have more opportunities. And also for me, like my abuela, she was really good at math in Mexico. But in Mexico, they didn't like she used to do her brother's homework, and she wasn't allowed to go study and go to school. And I eventually became a math major and then a math teacher. So for me, I was like, she wasn't able to do it, but I was able to do it. So I think that helps me, that a veces like, thinking like, poco a poco, todo con tiempo sometimes means generations. And when we think about it that way, that like, I am just like one person in a lineage of, I have my past ancestors, my future people, like what am I doing to just help us all? I think it's less guilt and less shame and more, pues tengo que trabajar, more pride.
Sí se puede, yeah.
Yeah, like I can do this. I need to do this. And at the end of the day, like you not investing, you not having money doesn't help the collective. One of the best things that each of us can do is, you know, being financially secure. Like that just helps everyone. So part of it, it like starts with yourself first. And so taking that, um, just understanding that. And it took me time. It took me time, and there's times back and forth. Like I always enter giveaways and I'm like, oh, well, I always want to win and I love giveaways. I have like, I do this all the time and I want a lot of giveaways because I enter so many. And but part of it, like there's this big one that I'm it's like $350,000, right? That's like this latest giveaway. And there's this part of me that was like, oh well, I shouldn't, like I don't, like I shouldn't win it. Like it should go to someone else who really needs it. But then I started thinking, Rita-Soledad, if you are the one who wins it, you already understand how much of that is going to go to taxes. You're going to have that money saved up. You already know like your plan of who in your family you're going to help in terms of like their credit card debt. You have your plan about how you're going to invest that money so then it becomes the down payment on a multi-unit or multi-family home, who then you could rent out to your brother, to your friend, your brother-in-law. Like so like you winning this money is going to help a lot of people. So don't shut yourself off from those, like even just like these for money. Don't, it's like at the end of the day, it's like it's good, like good people, like help people. And the more money you have, the more people you can help.
Absolutely. And the more knowledge you have, the more people you can help. I am always like shook in my core. Someone yesterday in an interview told me, like, Vanessa, you have helped thousands of people with their money. And it never really did like hit me that that is the extent of my reach, that I'm doing the Lord's work in my own special way. But it really puts in perspective like all the amazing work that we're doing on social media, and it almost relights that fire when I get frustrated and I'm like, okay, my taxes are all a mess again, or I'm exhausted from work. Do you feel like our like Mexican heritage also like allows us to work efficiently and just harder than some of our other peers? Because I get
Do I
done.
think that colonization has effed us up?
Yes, that too.
We don't know how to
Yes.
rest. Yeah.
True. I always like roll up my sleeves and I'm like, let me show you how a real Mexican does this. But I can't rest at all. And I constantly have like a happy, positive attitude about we can do this. But I wonder if it's from like deep seated colonization and abuse.
But also, Vanessa, you do take your time to rest. And people may not always see that. I mean, you do, like, I know you're into your skincare. And so, and traveling also so good for the soul. So I think it's also important for people to understand and for us to be a lot more transparent about like whenever we are able to work hard and create and do stuff, ideally it's because we're also resting just as hard, and we're also taking time to just chill. And it's hard for me. That's been a struggle. I mean, part of the reason why I got so sick back in March of 2019 is because I burnt out. I had 2 kids. I was back in the classroom trying to teach at the same level when I had no children. And now I had less support and less time. I literally had less time, and I wasn't adjusting and I wasn't shifting. And that's part of the reason I got sick. I think, yes, we work very hard. I also think that a lot of us work really hard and we're not compensated for our hard work. I think about, minimum wage in the United States at the federal level compared to a state level. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is
like,
crazy.
And like I have conversations with my sister about like, this idea of like working hard. And I'm like, I worked really, really hard as a teacher. And no matter what, I was only going to make a certain income. Like and to get like even a little bit more, it was going to require teaching after school, which actually required a lot more planning and consisted of a lot more. And then there's like people who are picking grapes in the farms, like they're working really hard and they don't have like access to certain things as we do. So part of me is like, yeah, we all need to work, and then we also need to adopt like what you have learned, outside of the United States, these programs that like help people, health
Yeah,
insurance,
absolutely.
you
Health
know.
insurance. I can't even tell you. My second life began once I became part of like socialized healthcare, because you don't have to create an emergency fund if your insurance runs out since you have cancer. Like that's just not something we have to consider here. We don't have mass shootings. The government, it's called Kindergeld. The German government literally gives you 300 euros per child to send them to elementary and pre-K school so you can go back to work if you want, so your kids can get ahead in school. I don't understand the fear in America. I'm so detached now and a little bit jaded, but we see other countries doing it successfully, but we call it Marxism and we demonize anyone that suggests it. How do you feel as a mom that has to plan for all these things that I just mentioned?
Well, one of like this month we spent our savings rate, which was it became an investing rate. Like what we were putting towards investing accounts used to be 47%. That's what we were sending, and I was able to do that because I was at home with my kids. But then it got to a point where husband and I were just fighting a lot, and it was just too stressful. And I was like, I didn't like this is not what I signed up for when it came to be a parent. Like I did not think I was going to be with my kids 24/7 in the house, not able to do all these things because of the global pandemic. And so we eventually got to a point where like we need childcare, and now 27% of our income is spent on childcare.
Wow.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah. And part of that is because we want to make sure to pay our nanny, um, you know, like legit, like on the books, because that means that she can, when we no longer need her, she's going to be able to have access to unemployment. She can start putting money towards social security. And that was really important to us to do it like, because there's some people who will hire a nanny and just pay them cash, but then all those years
Mhm.
those people are working for you, they can't even, you know, contribute to a Roth IRA, which is a big thing that I told my nanny. I was like, look, we're paying you and you're going to have access to this, but just can you promise me that you're going to invest in a Roth IRA? Um, so yeah, childcare is expensive. It's expensive. It's hard in terms of like working moms too, trying to figure that out. Because at the end of the day, like as much as my husband and I work so much about really like, and he does a lot. Like he's the one who cooks in the house, right? But there's so many things that I manage in terms of like contact with the teachers and planning like their little activities. Because my husband could just like be at home all day and the kids could just be like on tablets and he would be like, they're learning. And I'm like, no, no, we need to socialize. We need activities. We need to be doing arts and crafts. And so there is always like a heavier burden on mothers. And let's also not forget the fact that it's like your body too that gets impacted by that. Like part of the reason, some disadvantages that we had were all my medical issues with my firstborn, and I had to be on bed rest for him, and I had crazy bills. And I also didn't know, this is like one of my biggest financial regrets is I didn't know how to apply to get like money for maternity leave. So for both my children, I never got like here in the United States, it's unemployment, right? And it's actually under disability. So when you're pregnant, in order to get money to help cover your costs, which is like in other places would be like maternity leave, you actually have to file for disability. And that's how you get money. Well, I didn't think that. I didn't know about that. I was, so I didn't know that I could have money, still get some money from things that I've paid into with my own taxes, right? Like I've paid into unemployment and that I could have been still getting that money when I was at home with my kids.
I had no
Whereas
idea.
yeah, yeah. So it's like if you don't know that, if you don't know that you need to put in this paperwork and file for disability and get your doctors to sign off, then you're not going to get money. Well, those first, what did they give us? I think
50
16
bucks? I
weeks.
don't know.
It's only 16 weeks where you could even have access to that money in the first
Oh
place.
my god. In Germany, we have 2 years maternity, and I'm pretty sure the first one is fully paid for, and then the second one you get a subsidized amount.
You better stay over there when you.
I know, girl. I'm not
children.
coming back. Not coming back. I think this is a great place to end. I did have one last question for all the new families. So with the newborn children who are just starting their personal finance journey, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
As parents, it's important that you take care of your personal finances first. So our children right now still don't have college accounts. They don't have 529 accounts because one thing that we prioritized was us getting out of debt and us saving for retirement because there's no scholarships for retirement. So it's important that that you make sure that you're taking care of yourself financially before you start thinking so much in terms of your children's future. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So you got to take care of yourself first. All right, Soledad, where can everyone find you to follow up with more amazing tips, tricks, and beautiful budgets that are hand drawn? I love looking at your budget pictures.
I am Wealth para Todos on Instagram, a veces on Twitter, and hopefully soon you'll also be able to check out my blog at wealthparatodos.com.
And what about the YouTube series?
You know what? Husband is actually starting a YouTube series.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what if you follow me on Instagram? Eventually, you'll hear about husband's YouTube series. I like to write and read. That's my thing.
Okay. Well, no one's perfect. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Wealth and Wanderlust. We'll see you in the next episode.
Want to win a free finance-related digital product valued anywhere from $15 to $300? Just subscribe and leave a review on iTunes with your name. I'll announce the winner each month on the podcast, and you can DM me on Instagram to claim your prize. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll see you next week.